once the Bitcoin price crosses 100, 200, 300, 500,000, people are going to realize, holy, this is continuing to be the best performing asset in the world. How can I not hold this? And more people are going to buy it. And so, it's just like, what? This society is so broken, and it's all because of the fiat money. And, I do believe there's a God, and I do believe he's going to come down and wreak vengeance on all these fiat assholes. I mean, he's going to make this fiat money worthless. And, then the rest of us, the remnant of this country, the people who are the workers and the honest folks, we're going to rise back up, and we're going to start transacting with each other and adding value, and we're going to use an honest currency to do it. And the most logical, honest currency with which to do it is Bitcoin, and that's what's going to happen. So
Lawrence Lepard starts out by stressing the US dollar's precarious situation and its decreasing worldwide power. He points out previous legislative initiatives, like Senator Lummis's plans to include Bitcoin in the banking system. Lepard is appreciative of these endeavors, although he is skeptical about their immediate effects. He thinks a wider acceptance of Bitcoin's inherent worth will be the real driver of its rise, particularly if traditional currencies continue to lose their legitimacy. Lawrence makes reference to Gresham's law in his claim that Bitcoin would become more and more regarded as the best performing asset in the world as its price rises to $100,000 or even $500,000. Lawrence believes that this increased knowledge will set off a snowball effect in which more people and organizations adopt Bitcoin, which will raise its price. Before proceeding, remember to like and subscribe to our daily videos like this. Now let's hear what Lawrence Lepard has to say.
I think everything that supports Bitcoin and makes the Bitcoin dollar, sadly, I don't think Loomis's bill is going to get any traction. I think it's a great move on her part. I'm glad she did it. It's, just like I'm glad Trump embraces Bitcoin, not even understanding it. It's all good. But, in terms of actually having something happen as a result of that, I think the odds are quite low. If it did happen and they became, they got on the bid for it and started buying it, it's going to push the price much higher. And you want to talk about what's going to cause the dollar to fail. It's going to be the realization. This goes back to Gresham's law, right? Once people realize that, once the Bitcoin price crosses 100, 200, 300, 500,000, people are going to realize, holy, this is continuing to be the best performing asset in the world. How can I not hold this? And more people are going to buy it. And so, that's just a problem until eventually everyone goes, it's kind of like, and it's going to be slower than this example, but it's kind of like the example of Silicon Valley Bank. The word spread, or like a fire in a theater, the word spread, and as the word spreads and spreads and spreads, and more people realize this bank is bankrupt. Then one day, $100 billion of deposits. They had $49 billion of deposits withdrawn in one day, and one day later the bank was bankrupt. And so that goes to Parker Lewis's gradually then suddenly, right? And so, there will come, in my opinion, and you've even had some people, like I say, you've even had some people kind of alluding to this. You got the Fed chairman saying this is not sustainable. Okay. Well, I guess, another model of this is the emperor's got no clothes on. The U.S. is bankrupt, and we're spending way too much money. We've got an uncontrollable financial and fiscal situation. So the question really is, who's going to be the little boy that says, hey, this guy's naked? And then everyone goes, oh, yeah, you're right. Another perfect example of this exact same phenomenon was many of us were saying, Biden is senile. The guy has totally lost it, right? We've known this for a year or two, and they gaslit us and said, oh, no, he's great, everything's fine. And then finally, one day they put him up on a stage in a debate, and guess what? We all know he's senile, and therefore he's no longer running for president. And that's what's going to happen. Maybe not that quickly, maybe not that dramatically, but that's the kind of mental phase shift that's going to happen. And, by being aware of it today, my view is, the whole financial saying was, he who panics first panics best. If we're going to have a panic, if we know the dollar is going to fail, we'll get out now. Because I'd much rather buy Bitcoin at 70,000, a coin than at 700,000 a coin. They're both going to protect you, but I wish I'd been Max. I wish I'd been buying it at $2 a coin, but I wasn't smart enough or aware enough to do that, and that's why I'm not a billionaire. Yeah. He is, but it's to me, it's just an inevitable trend, and therefore, that's why I do what I do, and I just pound the table to people to try to protect themselves. because I can just, it's pattern recognition. I can just see this pattern. I've seen it in financial things for 40 years. And, this is going to go much, much, much higher. The only thing, in my opinion, Walker, that could change it would be incredible change at the government level to get more fiscally responsible. I mean, when people come to invest in my fund, sometimes they'll say, well, if they're smart, they'll say, what could go wrong? How do I lose money, Larry? What changes so that this gets, I say, okay, it's pretty simple. And they laugh when I tell them this. I say, if suddenly the government says, all right, we're going to balance the budget, we're going to means test Social Security, we're going to raise the retirement age, we're going to close all the military bases, we're going to stop sending money overseas, and we're going to completely balance the budget so that we're no longer running a deficit and we don't have to print money, well, okay, then suddenly having sound money isn't going to be as important. And the price of Bitcoin is not going to go up as much, and the price of gold is not going to go up as much because the dollar won't be being debased as quickly. But, as you were smiling as I said that, because we all know, what are the odds of that happening, right? I mean, they would seem to be pretty low. They seem to go on, they're either low or they're zero. But, in both cases, I mean, I know which side of this trade I want to be on, right? It's just like, what? This society is so goddamn broken, and it's all because of the fiat money. And, I do believe there's a God, and I do believe he's going to come down and wreak vengeance on all these fiat assholes. I mean, he's going to make this fiat money worthless. And, then the rest of us, the remnant of this country, the people who are the workers and the honest folks, we're going to rise back up, and we're going to start transacting with each other and adding value, and we're going to use an honest currency to do it. And the most logical, honest currency with which to do it is Bitcoin, and that's what's going to happen. So it's a very optimistic story at the end. But, honestly, the next 5 to 10 years, might be pretty turbulent. And, but I'm with Saylor. We have to be cheerful and constructive.
Beyond just economic concerns, Lawrence Lepard's critique of fiat money also touches on social and moral issues. He makes the case that fiat money is the root of numerous social issues, and thinks that its ultimate demise will open the door to a society that is more moral and honest. As he believes that Bitcoin is the most rational and moral form of money, Lepard anticipates a day in the future when honest, hard-working people would start making transactions with it. Lepard also draws attention to a clear change in international trade regulations. The US dollar has historically dominated global reserve currency markets, but as more nations begin to trade in their own currencies and settle accounts in gold, this dominance is beginning to weaken. Lepard notes that although purchases of gold ETFs have decreased, the price of gold is still high, indicating that many countries still view it as a reserve asset. Anyway, let's hear what he has to say.
So, yes, we are the reserve currency. That's a plus. But we run a much larger trade deficit than anybody else, much larger. I mean, what do we export? We export weapons and money. I mean, people really, there's not much else. Whereas other people, Russia and a lot of other places, I mean, they're exporting stuff. I mean, real valuable stuff. What we're talking about here is, I mean, the dollar has a bid because it was the reserve currency. And it still is the reserve currency, but that's fading fast. We got to go into something. We'll talk about gold in here in a second. What the answer to your question has to do with: when do countries start trading based on their trade balance and their investment balance, and not just on the power they've got and their military power, like what we've got? And so the military power and the fact that we are historically the world's reserve currency have been how the dollar is valued. So, I could see us being the last currency standing, but I could also see us going sooner than some other currencies that are in countries that are much better in terms of the balance of trade. I mean, because relative currency valuations often really have to do with just trade. I mean, what are you exporting? What are you importing? Because that's what those cross prices are. And more importantly, the real issue with the dollar is not it. I mean, Brett says, well, it's a milkshake, it's better. Fine, I ignore all that. They're all pieces of paper. They're all fiat currencies. I mean, there's nobody in the world who's really running a sound money standard. So that really doesn't matter. What matters is the dollar cross to gold and the dollar cross to Bitcoin. I mean, and those are the two clues that tell you, I mean, if Bitcoin's at $500,000 a coin and gold's at $10,000 an ounce, well, guess what? The dollar is failing on an absolute basis. So let's kind of touch there into another area that I think is relevant, which is, we're seeing, and this is big to me, in the United States, I mean, and you have to remember, we all believe Bitcoin's a solution, and it is. It's much better than gold. But, I mean, most people aren't where we are. most people, in governments who are thinking, okay, we got to do a reset or we got to go back to sound money, the first thing that comes to their mind is gold. I mean, a perfect example, this is a really nice lady, and she's very smart, named Judy Shelton, who was nominated for the Fed. She's a sound money person. And I think that the general view is that we've got to go, if we're going to do a reset, it would be a reset to gold. And what you're seeing out there right now is you're kind of seeing that happen subtly but consistently. And what I mean to say is that everything, all trade used to be in dollars, but you're seeing now countries trading with each other in their own currencies and then net settling in gold. And that's why the gold, what's very interesting to me is that the gold price has been very strong in spite of the fact that gold ETF purchasing has gone down. I mean, the Bitcoin ETFs have eaten gold's lunch, right? Bitcoin ETFs have gone from nothing to being substantial in size. Gold ETFs have been shrinking the whole time. Okay, you look at that and you would think to yourself, well, the price of gold should be going down, but it's not. I mean, yesterday the price of gold traded at a new all-time intraday high at 2458 or something. But and the reason for that is that other countries are using gold. They are using gold as their neutral reserve asset. They realize that having the dollar as a neutral reserve asset is a losing proposition. In other words, they're very much like the French were in '71. They can see the problem that we've got, and they're thinking, oh shit, I'm not hanging on to these things. I'm not buying any more treasury bills. In fact, I'm selling treasury bills. And China and Japan have both been net sellers of treasury bills the last 6 months. Other countries doing the same. And most people, I think, are just saying, if I'm going to try and store value, maybe I ought to do it in gold. Sadly, and maybe some countries are doing it in Bitcoin, but I don't think at the sovereign level other than El Salvador and maybe some countries in the Middle East.
In conclusion, Lawrence Lepard notes that although the US dollar has remained strong historically and militarily, this position is diminishing. Lepard notes that while the dollar's reserve position has supported its value, countries are starting to trade in their own currencies and settle balances in gold, which is reducing the dollar's reliance. Lepard also discusses how the value of currencies is often tied to a country's trade and investment balances rather than just military power. He points out that while the US might be the last currency standing due to its military and historical influence, other currencies and countries with better trade balances could outlast the dollar. Lepard's main lesson is that the dollar's exchange rates with gold and Bitcoin are the true measures of its strength. Should Bitcoin rise to $500K per coin or gold reach $10,000 per ounce, this would indicate the dollar's ultimate collapse. He also observes a small but noteworthy change in the patterns of international trade, with nations increasingly settling in gold rather than dollars and trading in their own currencies. The price of gold is still high, suggesting that nations still see it as a significant reserve asset, even in spite of a decline in the purchase of gold ETFs and an increase in Bitcoin ETFs. An increasing mistrust of the dollar as a neutral reserve asset is reflected in this change, as nations such as China and Japan are selling off their US Treasury bills in favor of keeping value in gold. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe for daily videos like this.